What's up, everybody? Thanks as always for supporting the show. It would mean a lot to me if you would take a second to scroll down and hit that subscribe button to the Hoops Tonight YouTube channel, and then follow me on social media on TikTok, Instagram, and Twitter so you guys don't miss any of our content over the course of this season. All right, let's talk some basketball. Maybe a hot take, but the Celtics without Porzingis playing don't look like a contender. The drop-off from Kristaps Porzingis to Al Horford is huge at this point, and I feel like every time KP isn't playing, it's a really close win or they lose if the opponent is a decent team. Zubac was also out when they got blown out by the Clippers, so pretty strange. It's an interesting thing to bring up. I agree, for the record. Like, if Kristaps Porzingis goes down, it's a gigantic blow to any title chances for the Celtics. My thing is, like, anytime someone brings that up, I go, okay, but like, is there a team out there that can withstand that sort of thing? Like, let's look at Denver. If they lose Jokic, season over, obviously. You lose Jamal Murray, season's over, obviously. It's just we saw that in the two previous playoff runs. Like, there's just not enough offensive firepower, and that happens. You know, Michael Porter Jr. is like a rebounder, a help defender, and a spot-up guy. Like, it's just a big drop-off going from him to like a Justin Holiday. Or even if you go to like a Peyton Watson, if you run Peyton Watson and Aaron Gordon and Nikola Jokic, I think some of the bigger, more athletic teams are going to really pack the paint and test Peyton and Aaron Gordon as shooters, right? Take Aaron Gordon out of the situation. It's a significant drop-off down to Peyton Watson, who's a good young player. Aaron Gordon's one of the best role players in the league. KCP is their best perimeter defender. He's like literally the guy they throw on the other team's best guard every single night. Like, he's vitally important to them. So point being, Denver can't afford to lose anybody either. Milwaukee, like, if they lose Chris Middleton, they're like Marjan Beauchamp is who you're going to. Jay Crowder, who is incredibly slow at this phase in his career. Obviously, Dame and Giannis are vitally important. We just talked earlier about how bad they are at backup center. So if Brook Lopez is out, that's obviously catastrophic. Malik Beasley's out. Okay, you put in Andre Jackson Jr. Now you're playing a kid in these environments. Like, they're just Pat Connaughton. I guess going from Malik Beasley to Pat Connaughton is like the one where you're like, it doesn't affect their chances that much. But again, if Milwaukee loses an important role player, they're in a tough spot. The Clippers, you lose James Harden, changes that team. Lose Paul George, changes that team. Lose Kawhi Leonard, changes that team. Lose Terrence Mann, changes that team. Lose Zubac, changes that team. The Lakers, they can't afford anybody either. Like, none of these teams can afford to lose a player. So, like, the margins are too tight. So I agree with you as it pertains to Porzingis. My thing is, like, I just don't think it's a problem that's unique to Boston. Next question. I saw someone suggest a Malcolm Brogdon and Jeremy Grant trade for the Lakers and was wondering what you thought about it. It's doing the two things you said you want for the Lakers at their 1-3. I would love Jeremy Grant. I think he's actually a much better defensive player than he's shown in Portland. I think we saw some of that when he was in Denver. I just don't think, from what I've heard, Jeremy Grant has much interest at all in playing a role for a contender. That doesn't mean a trade can't be made there. It just, I'm just not sure that he's the right guy to go after it because he doesn't necessarily want to do it. But as a player, I think he'd be perfect. He can shoot the ball really well. He can attack mismatches. He's got perimeter defense capability. I love Jeremy Grant. Think he could help a lot of teams, but I just don't necessarily see a team trading for him. I don't think Malcolm Brogdon necessarily helps the Laker backcourt because he's not athletic enough. He's a better athlete than Austin or D'Lo, but he's not a great athlete the way that like a DeJounte Murray or a Bruce Brown is. He's just another skill guard. And so I wouldn't really necessarily see Malcolm Brogdon as a guy that could help too much, and I think someone else will end up hopping in there to get him. Next question. When Jason says best, don't take him seriously. He said Anthony Davis was the best player in the world last playoffs a few days before the Denver series. Then said AD isn't good enough post-Denver series. Do change his mind, depends on what agenda he wants to say today. So this is a consistent thing that I get criticism for on this show that I wanted to bring up. There's a huge difference between the way I rank players in a vacuum versus the way I rank players in terms of like the amount of recognition they deserve. To me, the guy who gets the trophy gets all the bragging rights. And at that point, before the Denver series last year, I was speaking about the bragging rights. Anthony Davis was a player who had a better playoff resume to that point than Nikola Jokic. That's why I had him in that position. Myself, nor anybody, thought that Anthony Davis was a better player than Nikola Jokic in a vacuum. None of us thought that. That wasn't the situation. I thought it was the kind of like standing, like ego-related, resume-related, like reputation-related standing going into that series. AD's here, Jokic is here. Let's see what happens in the series. Oh, wait, Jokic is way up here. He's way better than Anthony Davis. I also ranked Luka Doncic 10th in my player rankings this summer. Do I actually think Luka is the 10th best player in the world? No. It has to do with the way I do rankings based on reputation and historical performance in the playoffs. That's just me as it pertains to respect and acknowledging what actually has been done. It's just kind of my overall philosophy regarding winning. I'm a big believer in like winning is why we do this. Let's acknowledge and respect and give props to the winners. In a vacuum is an entirely different conversation. To me, that it's like two completely separate conversations, for lack of a better word. And to Anthony Davis's credit, he did outplay Nikola Jokic in the conference finals back in 2020, which was kind of the grounds for why that was the case. But the other thing too, and this is the last thing I'll say about it, I am never married to an opinion. I'm always going to react to new information. So like the idea that I have an agenda doesn't actually make any sense, because I had an agenda that a center couldn't win a title as a slow-footed player last year, because that was based on NBA history. But then new information came to the table, and it's like, oh, actually this can work as long as XYZ happens and as long as the player can do ABC. And then all of a sudden I'm like, okay, this new information is going to change my outlook. Now I do believe you can win that way as long as these other things happen, right? So like, again, like I know it's really hard when you watch, like, because I know not everybody watches every single video. And so a lot of times like my overarching opinions can get kind of disseminated into these like, out of context things. And like those of you guys who actually do follow the show more closely, I think have a better idea of where I stand on this stuff. But I wanted to use the mailbag today to clarify that kind of thing. I usually will tell you beforehand the difference between like what kind of list I'm making versus a different list. For instance, I have a contenders list and I have power rankings. My contenders list is purely about what I expect in the postseason. My power rankings is a method with which I can give props to players within the regular season. That's how that works, right? My player rankings are almost always going to be big picture, resume, reputation based. I'm not much into hypothetical player rankings. Hypothetically, Nikola Jokic was the best player in the world because that's what he was at that moment in time last year. But I wanted to see him get the trophy first because to me, the trophy matters. And so hopefully that kind of clarifies that for you guys.